a game of cricket, one man stands alone as the greatest all-rounder ever seen.
Greatest batsman of all time, Don Bradman. Greatest cricketer of all time, Gary Sobers.
I don't think there has been anyone that has done what Sir Garfield Sobers did.
He was an extraordinary batsman. He could bowl at pace.
Oh, and he's bowled it.
He can bowl slow, orthodox or unorthodox. He was a superb infieldsman and a glorious outfieldsman. What more can you do?
Sobers was like having three guys in your team.
What a wonderful shot.
Absolutely awesome. He was your complete cricketer. Best I've ever seen.
Gary Sobers was a hero to a nation. He retired after 2 decades, holding almost every record in the book and setting the standard for generations to follow.
People in the Caribbean, I don't think will ever forget the name Sir Garfield Sobers or the name Gary Sobers, forget the Sir. And even kids who don't know exactly what he did have heard about Gary Sobers.
Quite safe. Tremendous hit from Gary Sobers.
Watching Gary Sobers play, that sort of fueled my fires as far as cricket was concerned. Left-hander, you know, did it all. Fast bowler, bowled spin, batted aggressively. You know, brilliant fielder, you know, just had the lot.
Sobers was born Garfield St Auburn Sobers in July 1936 to Shamont and Thelma Sobers of Bridgetown, Barbados. He was the 5th of 6 children.
And there was no money ready for the Sobers family to buy gear and that type of thing. And bats were made from pieces of wood, for instance, and balls were made from tar, which was taken off the road. There was also marble cricket, known as Lilliputian cricket for obvious reasons, where the batsman batted on his knee.
Most cricketers from the Caribbean come from humble beginnings. Bibb Richards, he came from humble beginnings as well. Andy Roberts, one of the best bowlers, Malcolm Marshall, came from humble beginnings, and that is typical of Caribbean cricketers. A lot of cricketers in the Caribbean saw cricket as a way of progress, getting a better life.
He played everything. He played soccer. He played basketball to a very good level. In fact, he represented Barbados at soccer and at basketball at a younger age than he did at cricket. He became very strong in playing against boys who were much older than he was. He was more than their equal with batting, bowling, and fielding. He could do anything. But there was a little bit of a controversy, I suppose you would say, with Sobers and the older members of the club, the cricket club in the area. They said, no, we're not going to let the young Sobers be exposed to playing against big men in the more established clubs from the Barbados Cricket League, which was really the village league. And they decided that they wouldn't let him play.
But eventually, the young Sobers made it impossible not to select him. Despite being unable to play a note of music, he was recruited by the Barbados Police Band, qualifying for the police first-grade team.
And in fact, his first 100 was made for police against Wanderers.
Sobers had shown enough talent in just 2 first-class matches to be selected for the West Indies. His 3rd first-class appearance was his Test debut on March the 30th, 1954.
Just to show you how talented he must have been when you're playing first-class cricket at 16 and then you're playing test cricket at 17. That is not an easy feat, especially in the Caribbean. A lot of people in Asia, you hear about young kids in Asia getting to test match level at a fairly early age. But not in the Caribbean. I do not think there has ever been another teenage test cricketer in the Caribbean. So that was a fantastic feat by Gary, just to show you how talented he must have been.
To make a debut at age 17 is damn difficult for starters. But I think probably the more remarkable thing about Sobers was that he actually made his debut as a number 9 batsman and as a left-arm orthodox spinner. And not long after doing that, he was then sent in to open the batting against Australia with Lindwall and Miller bowling. I mean, that was no easy task facing those two guys. But not only was Sobers sent in to open the batting as a very young kid, but he was told to take on Lindwall and Miller. He was given those instructions by his captain. And take him on he did. He got, I think in that innings he got something like 44, and he hit about 8 or 9 fours. So he obviously did take them on. And probably that was the thing that decided the West Indies that number 9 was a bit low in the batting order.
He would make his 60s and 50s and so on. But as he says, he was shifted up and down the order. He felt that he needed some regular position in the order. And there were those who said, not to worry. This chap has the potential to make big runs, and when he makes the breakthrough, they'll flow. And of course, the breakthrough came when he broke Sir Len Hutton's record of 364, a record which had stood since 1938. And this was 1958 against Pakistan at Sabina Park in Kingston. He made 365, not only would have gone on and made some more, but the crowd was so excited they rushed onto the ground. And as it was, the score was over 700 and the declaration was in order. And therefore the captain, Jerry Alexander, declared Sobers was left 365 not out.
For your first Test 100 to be the world record score is, it's quite remarkable. But once you got to know the guy, you're not surprised because he could just do anything.
I suppose there was always the possibility he was going to do something very special. I mean, the genius of Sobers was evident very early. I mean, another one to have done the 300, of course, on debut was Bob Simpson, and it was patently clear from a very early age too that he had something special. But they certainly went about that in very different ways. Simpson batted interminably and very effectively, but of course Sobers played with all the flair and panache that we came to know in future years. And that was his greatness.
He's gone for the pole, and there it is. Brian Lara has done it, the new world record holder.
And of course the glorious thing was when his innings was to be bettered, of course, and there was Brian Lara was going to achieve something very special. Sobers was there to witness it and to applaud Lara, and has been a great admirer of Lara's. And that says much of one great player of one generation talking about another player of another generation.
I think Gary Sobers was very proud of the fact that Brian Lara broke that record. So I don't think Gary thought, oh hell, my record is going to be broken. And it was broken by a great batsman and another West Indian.
It was another West Indian who inspired Sobers. His close personal friend, Frank Worrell, was captain of the team on Gary's first tour to Australia in 1960.
One of the weaknesses historically of West Indian cricket has been a lack of direction on and off the ground. Worrell was able to provide that direction at a critical time, and he was fortunate that Sobers came through at that point, but so was Sobers, that he had Worrell as a leader at that time to direct him.
It was a very significant appointment because prior to that, West Indies were captained only by white amateur players, even though there were so many outstanding black players. If the West Indies had gone to Australia in 60-61 under Frank Worrell, the first black captain, and failed, it would have been a tremendous psychological setback to the people of the Caribbean. Quite the opposite. It was a huge success in every way. The West Indies played attacking cricket. Australia's captain, Richie Benaud, joined them in that.
That was a series of the Tide Test, and that later on in life you get to appreciate what that all meant to Caribbean people and how much interest there was in the West Indies team being in Australia.
Sobers would score 132 on the first day of the first Test at the Gabba. Some observers, including the South Australian selector, the great Don Bradman, considered it the best 100 they'd ever seen.
Bradman certainly liked what he saw, and Bradman was a fair judge of great players too. And of course established a very good rapport with him.
The next one will win the match. Hunt's throw is coming back. It's wonderfully accurate and he's out.
The match went down in legend as the first ever Tide Test.
And Hall bowls. Push to leg, they're running for anything now. And Joe Solomon's throw for a second time hits the stumps, and the match is tied. The first tie in Test match history.
Not only was it a tie, but the scoring rates were outstanding, and it revitalized Test cricket. And even though the West Indies lost the series 2-1, it was a very close series. They only lost the last Test match by 2 wickets. And the crowds and the people of Australia were so enamored by the West Indies' way of playing the game at that time that when they were leaving, something estimated in the vicinity of 100,000 were in the streets of Melbourne to bid them farewell and to say, we hope you come back soon again. It was tremendous.
Sobers would average 43 with the bat and take 15 wickets in the series. Calypso cricket had arrived in Australia, and Sobers personified it. On the strength of those performances, Bradman offered him a contract to play for South Australia. Sobers was an immediate success. He topped the batting and bowling averages at South Australia. His attacking style and influence would inspire the likes of future Australian captain Ian Chappell.
I saw, Sobers at his best against Benno and Davidson. And I mean, I remember Richie bringing Davidson back on to bowl to try and slow Sobers down, and he hit him for 6-4-6. And then Davo always tells a story, but I got him out. But, for an 18-year-old kid to see that innings and to see it played against players of that ilk, Benno and Davidson, who I'd grown up admiring greatly and knowing them as match winners, and here's this suddenly this guy belting them all around the park. So obviously that left a big impression on me.
It was a generation that shared its knowledge, and the game was played at a pace where you could share that knowledge. The modern game is so frenetic. The players move from one form of the game to another form of the game and from venue to venue, country to country so quickly that there's not the mateship, there's not the camaraderie, there's not the time together in the rooms. And Sobers, like many great champions of that time, was happy to share that knowledge. And Chappell is just but one of a number of high-profile players who benefited enormously from the counsel and advice of Sobers at that time.
To play in the same team and to quite often be batting at the other end and to see it, right up close, to see what he did up close. I mean, that was amazing enough. But the thing that I've always said about Gary Sobers, not only was he a champion cricketer, but he was a champion bloke.
Sobers succeeded Frank Worrell as captain of the West Indies, first led the West Indies in 1965 after Worrell's retirement. And in his first series led the West Indies to their first Test series victory over Australia. Perhaps significant in that because he had a close affinity with Australia. 1960-61 series had established himself there, and then had gone back to Australia to play for South Australia, and even married an Australian girl as well. And for him to have done that, to have led the West Indies to their first Test series victory over Australia in the Caribbean in 1965 in his first series as captain, was a momentous occasion for Gary Sobers.
Nash bowling now to Sobers. That he's got to pick that. That was the right distance. He's hit that out of the ground.
While Sobers was well known for the stylishness of his approach to the game, he could also be brutal. Playing for Nottinghamshire against Glamorgan in Swansea 1968, he would become the first batsman in the history of the game to hit 6 sixes from 1 over. The bowler whose name is etched in history was Malcolm Nash.
That's another one. Goodness graciously, that peppered the top. You see the chap climbing up there to have a look over the wall. 52 and 29 minutes. That's another one up in the enclosure. The last person we saw hit like this is Majid Jahangir in that wonderful knock against Glamorgan.
Sure that some batsmen might have tried it, but Sobers went 3 sixes and then might have said to himself, hey, I can go all 6 deliveries, and he tried, of course, and succeeded, as Sobers tended to do in everything else in the game.
Oh, he's got the shorter run.